Okay, this is the last video, the 5th part of the afternoon, and we're going to go through the main parts of it. So first we have the harder enemy, then we've got the boss battle, which we will tweak a bit, so that's going to be a bit easy. Power up, then the boss battle, then the sounds. Then this wrapping up, we're just going to quickly do this, include this in this chapter, and we are going to skip this part, the Neo Cities part. Anyway, so let's proceed. Let's create our harder enemy, our white enemy. So let's create an enemy that shoots at us and is faster and is tougher and moves in a more random way. First, the sprite sheet. Again, we load the sprite sheet at our top. So the shooting enemy, we set that sprite as that sprite sheet as white enemy. We call those our shooters. Then set up enemies, we add that after our normal regular enemies. So you can see it's pretty much the same. The reward is slightly different. Instead of 100, we got 400. The animations are the same. The only difference is it wait. It's going to be set later. The shooting delay will be set later. But yeah, it's basically the same as the normal regular enemies. Then let's set the diagonal movement. So spawn enemies. Spawn enemies. Set up bullets. Spawn enemies. So velocity, this velocity here is just downward, and our starting position is at the top. We are going to set this one slightly different. So we spawn it. It's the same here. Shooter health, same, still same. Difference is we set the target at the bottom. So we set the random position at the top, then we set the random position at the bottom. And that will decide the enemy spawn area and the enemy target area here. So that's what these two are doing. And next, we set the rotation. So to set the rotation, to first we set the we set the movement. We do two things in this single line of code. First, we move. We tell the sprite, the shooter sprite, to move to a location, and that's using the move to XY. Before we had the move to pointer, now we're going to use the move to XY to set the correct X and Y velocity of our shooter. And the target is, yes, so target is the X and the height is the Y. Then the speed is random. We put it directly here, and we could have put it in another variable to make it easier to read, but I don't know. I just decided that this one would be shooter, I guess. So that's the movement. However, there is a slight problem with our sprite. If we don't add this one, we are going to have funny thing happening in our. So we see something funny happen in our spawning. So let's wait. So there you go. We got our weird shooting enemies not oriented properly. So why does this happen? So normally the rotation of our sprites, if we do move to XY, it will automatically rotate the sprite accordingly, or this call will return the angle in terms of radians of the rotation. Unfortunately, this assumes that the sprite points to is oriented at 0 degrees or 0 radians. But since our sprite is pointed downwards, we have to make an offset. Again, the expected sprite, if you're going to go with the conventions of Phaser, it expects all of our sprites to be like this, pointed to the right, because that is 0 degrees in terms of rotation. But since we want to simplify this tutorial, we had our sprites, our enemy sprites pointing downwards and our player sprite pointing upward. But since now we had a situation that we have to rotate stuff, we have to rotate our sprite accordingly because it's going to a certain direction. We have to make an offset. So to offset that, we have to rotate at pi over 2 radians. So because again the default for the radians, the default angle is for 0 is pointing towards the x-axis. And just note, if you are familiar with the coordinate system and know the whole trigonometry thing, the rotation is at the opposite direction. Instead of going counterclockwise, we go clockwise, simply because our y-axis is switched. So that's just the basic thing. So point here is to make this not look weird, you have to do the offset. And one other thing that we failed to mention is this one. We start spawning 5 seconds into the game. So next shooter at by default is not starts at 0. It starts at 5 seconds to the game. Then once it spawns, it now spawns every second. Okay. Shooter delay is every second, right? Spawn shooter delay is every 3 seconds. Yes, every 3 seconds. It starts with 5 seconds, then every 3 seconds. Alright, so let's refresh the page first. Did we save or did we not save? Let's see. Looks like we saved. We did save. Then let's set the shooting. Our enemy bullet is a bit darker if we look at the assets. That would separate it from our normal bullet. So our bullet is lighter, enemy bullet is a bit darker. Makes it a lot easier to see especially when you're dodging it. Put it after our bullets. Then we put it at the bottom of our normal bullets. We remove the comments. And now we add another function in terms of the update. So every frame it will now check whether it's going to fire a shot or not. And shooting is done for each alive shooter. It will check, it has its own next shot at, which is by default is set already. Then we have our enemy bullet pool. It will only fire if there's an available in the bullet pool. Then it will start shooting at the center of the enemy. Then same thing, move. It's now no longer move to XY. It's now move to object. So when the shooter fires, it we tell the physics engine to move the bullet towards the current location of the player. So at the start, it will shoot towards the player. Then again, it will now reset the shooting delay. Anyway, let's just do this. 244. And that was 12, not 11. Then finally, let's add collision detection. First, the bullets, it should hit with the shooter. Check the bullet collision with the shooter. Fire, update, check collision. And also we check whether our player collides with the shooters or collides with the bullets of the enemy. And finally, upon winning, we also destroy the shooter and the bullet, so we don't suddenly die when we win. So that's add to score. And that's our shooter. Tougher, and it can hit us with its bullets. Bam. We win because it's already just 500. Right, so that's our harder enemy. It's harder once the boss arrives. It's not that hard yet, but once the boss arrives, it's going to be annoying. The boss fight. Anyway, next part is this one, the power up. So pretty much all shooters have their power ups. Let's add a power up in our game. Power up should be after the bullet. And player icons, we consider this one as a player icon. It's on the same Z index, same level anyway. Here's the top, but just below the lives. Then we set the drop rate. So drop rate is here set at 0.3 and 0.5. So there's a 30% chance, we're going to calculate that later, to drop it when it's regular enemy. If it's a shooter, it's going to be 50%. The bullet pool, setup enemy. So after the reward, got our drop rate. set our drop rate. Then call in damage enemy. When the enemy explodes, we try to spawn the power up. So after it explodes, let's spawn the power up. And now we calculate whether let's decide how the power up is spawned. So again, check if there's dead, and we set the power weapon level. If the weapon level is already maxed, we're not going to spawn new power-ups. And call the round frac. It's going to get a random fraction between 0 and 1. If it's lower than the drop rate, it's going to spawn it. So, reset, just spawn the enemy, spawns a new power-up at the enemy location, former enemy location, and there you go. Set up the velocity so that it will go down quickly. 414. Then weapon level, just a quick run. Initially set it to 0. Then we set the collision handler so that if the player runs over the power up, we do something. That's going to be at the end. And this player power up function will have will do that. So if we run over the power up dies and the weapon level increases, and we get a reward score, 100 points for getting a power up. Then we start again from 0 when we get hit. Player hit. You're not dead. We just get close to death. And now we replace our normal shot with a spread shot. Let's do this. So let's do this. Let's remove the bullet pool count dead because our spread shot will have more than just one bullet. And yeah, we remove the old code and replace it with this one. This is the normal bullet code, just normal bullet velocity. The spread shot is slightly different. It will fire weapon level times 2 bullets. So weapon level is 1, I'm going to fire 2 bullets. Weapon level is 5, it's going to fire 10 bullets at a time. So if it lacks bullets, it's not going to fire any bullet. Then there you go. It's going to spawn the bullet slightly off center. So from 95 degrees to negative 135 degrees. So yeah, I failed to mention before that there are 2 ways to define the angle If you're going to use degrees, you're going to use this term angle. If you're going to use radians, you're going to use rotation. Anyway, point is, this whole code just spreads the shot and uses uses the built-in velocity from angle to angle the shots, to set the angle the shots via the velocity, xy velocity, based on the rotation or the angle. And let's change the score. Let's increase this to say 5,000. Then let's play. So we got a power up. If we run over the power up, we are now firing 2 bullets at a time. And 2 bullets. 6 bullets. 4 bullets. Then at 5, it's not going to spawn anymore. New power-ups are not going to spawn anymore. And what we mentioned earlier, if you get hit, you're going to go back to 1. Anyway, that's that for our power-up. Next one is our boss battle. So this is a boss battle which just combines everything that we learned before and adds a new concept, which is the boss phases. So let's start off with adding the boss. Then again, set up enemies. We put it in a pool again because there's some there's some quirks in the normal group to pool comparison. We can solve that, but I'd rather prefer this to be more consistent. And yeah, we've got the basics, and we've got this one. No, this one. This is the phase. So at the start, the boss is approaching. It's going to be invincible, and that's that for the boss. That's for the boss setup. Then add the score. Yeah. Just we just change the winning condition to when the boss dies. So we remove the original winning condition and we have to wait until the boss dies, and we're going to move the win condition to when the boss dies. And we have this one which prevents the boss spawning upon winning. Let's reduce this to, I don't know, 5,000. Then spawn boss. So at the start, it's approaching. It's going to approach from the top. So reset at the middle, at the top. It's going to go down slowly. Then when the boss Y is greater than 80 pixels, it's no longer approaching. It's now going to be bouncing left and right. So it will set the initial velocity to something, then we set the bounce, and collide world bounds through. Collide world bounds through and the bounce, so that it will bounce left and right. But first, let's just do the spawn boss. What the hell? Alright. Just re-record that macro later. And process delayed effects. First phase of the boss, the approaching. Then you check the collisions. It's not going to hit us unless it's essentially invincible, and we're not going to hit it when it's approaching. Then by default, it's got 500 health if you look at the constants. Add the boss. Then again, we move the win condition when the boss is dead. Note that we use this key. There are other ways to define an object, what it is, but the simplest way is to just check the sprite key. But again, in full games, you might be better off setting flags, different flags for that. But for simplicity's sake, we're just going to check what sprite it is. If it's the boss and the boss blows up, we win. Right, this is the crazy part, the boss shooting code. So by default, if the boss is health is greater than 250, it's going to fire like this. If it's no longer 250, it's less than 250, it's going to fire this ultra difficult but pretty much usual bullet hell firing pattern. So yeah, let's just copy paste it and see it in action. The explanation is there. You want to tweak it, feel free to do so. This is for the boss. My voice is starting to croak after a couple of hours. And that should work. Hopefully. We don't expect to win. Generally, we don't really expect to win, and especially when this setup and it's not as easy to control. Anyway, that's the approaching part. We reach 5,000, that's what we set. And once it reaches 80, it starts bouncing around, and this is the first phase. It's pretty easy to dodge, actually. So it's no different from the style that the normal shooters do. So just fires a row of bullets to a single location, which is your previous location. So it's pretty easy to dodge. The second phase is a lot harder because it's spread out more more, what you call this, more uniformly. So you expect to die in the second phase because again this is stuttering. We can't really control this as easily as we could as with a normal, with a full computer or a modern mobile device. So yeah, we died. Anyway, just to point out that yes, that's how things work. So we can change this to, I don't know, and reduce this to 50, and we change the boss health to 100, or just change that to boss health to I think I should change this. Might see the current version to use this this refactored form. Let's try to win. Let's try to win. And after this, the only thing that we need to do is the sounds and the wrap up. And after that, I can now go to sleep. So it's approaching. Just dodge it. So that's 50. And yes, we won. We won because we cheated. So yeah, that's the boss battle. And next part is the sounds. Sounds. So we already have the sounds. Phaser supports a lot of formats. OGG is the preferred choice because there's no licensing issues. It's fully open source. M4A for AAC and MP4 or M4A is for Apple devices. MP3, avoid MP3 because of licensing issues. But if you're just going to create a game for you or and your friends, sure, use your MP3s. WAV is, well, it's cross-platform, but it should be avoided because it's usually larger. But if you can't, we used WAV here because it's pretty much the most cross-platform. But if you compare the size of the sound effects, you'll quickly see that there is a huge difference. So for example, explosion 32 KB compared to the WAV file, which is 164 KB. Let's just load the audio. It shouldn't take long. We don't have a lot of don't have a lot of audio anyway. So create, we add to create a final new function is to set up the audio. This would load the audio. So this is preloading audio. The audio initialization is to set it to objects is here in the setup audio. And let's just put that after the setup text. Then we call the play for each sound effect. So for example, if the enemy dies, so enemy dies. Enemy dies. Explode enemy. So the enemy explodes. We play the special effects. Similarly, if the player is hit, we play the player explosion. Now when the enemy fires, whether it's the boss or the shooter, we set that after the delay is set. And player firing, same thing. We call the sound effects after we fire. After we set the delay for the fire. And finally the power up. Power up dies. And power up SFX. That's the explosions. That's the shot of the enemies. So that is the power up. And when the player is hit, slightly different explosion. Anyway, that's that for the audio. And now we're done with the full game. Now to wrap things up and wrap things up so that I can go sleep. Alright, again, we remove all the preload because we're going to go back to the different states. So we got the boot, preload, main menu, game. We skipped all of those, go directly to the game because we don't want to waste our time clicking for the game to start. To do that, we remove the basic game preload because all of that is already preloaded. We're not going to preload everything again. Because if you see the preload.js, that's already there. But there's also in the boot, there's also another preload in the boot. It preloads the bar for the boot. And also in the main menu JS, we have this one. We added this because reasons. And we changed app.js back to boot. And we add the missing additional stuff for the game wrap up. And that's that. That's our game. And we won. Let's try controlling it using this one. Alright, anyway, let's try using WebGL. But basically that's it. Thanks for watching these videos, these slightly edited videos. Again, thanks for downloading or hopefully paying for the book. It's slightly faster with WebGL. Anyway, thanks for watching and look forward to the better video, the better edited videos in a couple of months. Oh yeah, there's the challenges. I'll leave that to you. Anyway, again, thanks for watching and have a pleasant game development learning afternoon.